Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
There should have been some notification so that everyone understood why those changes were being made.
BC's disease experts apologize for causing confusion about COVID isolation guidelines. The push for clearer communication. Also,
I'm overwhelmed with joy and happiness, and I honestly am just shocked.
It's just been so inspiring seeing all my colleagues come together in this way.
relief for expectant parents. Fraser Health backs off on a plan to close the maternity ward at Peace Arch Hospital. And
I feel so happy to be able to invite people back into the space.
back to the grind.
I get really anxious if I'm not able to go to the gym.
Gyms can officially reopen in BC, but there are still some restrictions.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Anita is off tonight. The BC Centre for Disease Control says it's sorry. Last night, it quietly posted on its webpage yet another round of COVID-19 self-isolation guidelines. The centre now says it recognizes that approach led to confusion. As Belpuri reports, British Columbians already frustrated with a grinding pandemic simply want clear communication on changes that affect their lives.
Childcare centres across the province say they're once again having to pivot to meet revised COVID-19 guidelines.
The new regulations certainly took us a little bit by surprise.
The latest recommendations still have people concerned.
The new guidelines almost lessened the regulations a little bit, allowing children to come when they've been exposed. It's worrisome, for sure.
The BC Centre for Disease Control says if you're fully vaccinated but test positive for COVID-19, you need to self-isolate at home for 5 days and until your symptoms improve and you no longer have a fever. If you're not fully vaccinated and test positive and you're older than 18, you need to self-isolate at home for 10 days and until you no longer have a fever and your symptoms improve. If you are under 18, you need to self-isolate at home for 5 days and until you no longer have a fever and your symptoms improve.
The CDC also says close contacts don't have to self-isolate or take special measures. Close contacts are generally people who are close to someone with COVID-19 for at least 15 minutes without any safety precautions in place.
Vaccinated or not, there's no need to be retested for the virus after your self-isolation period ends.
Our board of directors, which is made up of parents, actually had a policy that we will ask families, if you have COVID in your household, please don't come. So when we see these regulations or these guidelines come out, it's puzzling to me.
Medical professionals say the guidelines make sense and are supported by science, but better communication with British Columbians is a must.
When people in authority say something, that this is the new guidance based on science, we need to do the best we can to make sure that the written documents that relate to those statements are updated as quickly as possible. I think over the past day or so that has caused great confusion.
In an apology over how it announced the latest guidelines, the BC CDC says it will strive to ensure there's a better change management process in the future.
There should have been some notification so that everyone understood why those changes were being made on the guidance, not on the substance of it, which Dr. Henry had announced, but on the guidance. And that didn't happen, and they've apologized for that, and we move on.
In a bid to make things simpler, childcare experts say the newest regulations may just have made everything that much harder. Belpuri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hospitalizations in BC dropped slightly today, the first time since Omicron's surge. They fell by 4 to 891. In the past week, people who are not fully vaccinated accounted for 31% of hospitalizations. At least 4 more people are in critical care. That's up to 119 now. Deaths also went up. 15 more people have died from COVID over the past 24 hours. That's the highest daily death count since early February of last year. More than 2,500 people in BC have now died from the disease. And the province has declared 8 more outbreaks and 6 over. There are 58 ongoing outbreaks. The Union for some grocery workers in BC hope more stores will follow the lead of Save On Foods and limit how many people can shop at once, all to try to stop the spread of the coronavirus. United Food and Commercial Workers Union International says it supports the move to cut store capacity to 50%. The grocery chain said yesterday it will put up signs to remind shoppers to keep their distance. The union also wants hazard pay reinstated and mask rules strictly enforced.
The number one concern we hear from our members is that they are still interacting with unmasked people when they walk into the stores. Management and all stores should be the ones to enforce it. And as a reminder to customers, our members are wearing masks 8 to 9 hours a day at work. We're asking you to wear them for the 15 to 20 minutes you're doing your grocery shop to help keep them and everyone safer.
CBC News asked Sobeys whether it will limit the number of customers in its stores like Safeway. It has yet to respond. Gyms and fitness centres in BC are now allowed to officially reopen their doors. It's been a month since they were forced to shut down because of provincial health protections geared to fight the Omicron wave. While many feel relief about the change, as Johanna Wagstaffe shows us, there are still restrictions in place.
At this fitness studio, it's time to roll out the mat and get ready for action.
Reopening again is so exciting for us.
Staff are thrilled to be back.
I feel so happy to be able to invite people back into the space and them knowing that this is a really safe place for them to be.
Fitness centers like this and gyms are gradually opening up, but not at full capacity. Each needs to give at least 7 square meters of floor space per person, and that will determine how many people can train there. But spaces that offer group activities like yoga, Pilates, and circuit training can host up to 25 people, all depending on their floor space.
Any amount of students in the space honestly feels like a blessing.
And for individual workouts at gyms like this, there's no 25-person maximum.
The tears of joy and happiness that came from our group when we heard Dr. Henry say that gyms could reopen.
And besides being spaced apart, people must wear masks, except when they're actively exercising, though they're encouraged to keep them on the whole time. They also have to show proof of vaccination and may need to pre-book their visit. Measures are needed to protect staff and customers, fitness experts say.
They're operationally reasonable, and they are going to keep people healthy and safe. So we're really excited to get reopened and get people back taking care of their mental and physical health.
Closures have also strained many people's mental health, like this dancer.
I get really anxious if I'm not able to go to the gym, or I feel like myself getting pretty tense.
She plans to spend at least 6 to 8 hours at the gym a week.
I'm really excited to get back into the gym and to get back into the studio.
For those still preferring to work out at home, this studio is leaving that option open to help keep people moving wherever they are. Johanna Wagstaffe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, as we heard, when gyms and fitness centres were closed, some people argued they were pivotal to improving their mental health. But as Kurt Petrovich explains, researchers are finding it's not necessary to leave home to benefit from exercise.
Bernie Maroney has a history of depression in his family.
Take a breath in.
Yoga helps him stay positive, but when the pandemic hit, he had nowhere to go.
And I was going to hot yoga, and it's very hard to replicate that in a home. And I tried, and it failed rather miserably.
That's when Maroney volunteered for a study that gave him a commercial fitness app for free in exchange for having his mood measured through weekly questionnaires.
And you just choose how many minutes you want to do, and you press start.
The study built on decades of evidence showing depression symptoms can be eased by exercise. Timely research as the pandemic took a toll on mental health.
It was really just broadly across the whole community people were suffering. So we wanted to see whether we can support people.
Those doing both yoga and high-intensity exercise reported the biggest improvement.
72% of the ones who were could be categorized as having high depression at the start were by 6 weeks were now below that level. That's quite significant.
There's been enough studies. There is absolutely no question at all.
This psychiatrist has seen exercise work in real time.
You start to get yourself into a regular routine. You start to get out and be outside and doing things.
He says exercise can influence brain chemistry, and he began prescribing exercise to his patients 8 years ago.
Start with a nice easy warm-up.
Those prescriptions became a formal program called Jump Step. It's led by a former patient who says exercise helped.
So when you're depressed, your mind is so busy with negative thoughts and chatter. And when you kind of take yourself out of your mind and into your body doing physical things, you get a break from all that chatter, and it is a good feeling. And step on the tubing.
The BC government has also a good feeling about it. It's looking at making Jump Step a province-wide program. Kurt Petrovich, CBC News, Vancouver.
A trip to the hospital will soon cost a few dollars more. Pay parking is being reinstated at BC Health Authority sites. The change comes into effect March 4th, almost 2 years after parking fees were waived in April 2020. Officials claim free hospital parking is making it hard for staff, patients, volunteers, and visitors to find a spot. They claim too many non-hospital users are taking advantage of the situation to park for free. Free parking will continue for patients receiving dialysis or cancer treatment in acute care programs. Volunteers and families of children staying overnight will also be able to park at no charge. A protest at Peace Arch Hospital today criticizing a planned closure of the maternity ward that would have sent parents and infants to hospitals elsewhere. But as Janella Hamilton shows us, mid-protest, there was a sudden and very welcome change of plans.
Dozens of community members, including expectant mothers, doctors, and city officials, gathered outside Peace Arch Hospital Thursday morning, waving signs demanding Fraser Health keep the maternity ward open. They were ready for a long fight, but shortly after noon, news came out that the cut was canceled.
I feel like I'm still in a state of shock. I actually cannot believe the decision happened right now, and I'm overwhelmed with joy and happiness, and I honestly am just shocked.
Fraser Health suddenly announced that they are not suspending the maternity program and that they now had enough staff to keep the program running.
We have significant new scheduling commitments that enable us to prevent the diversion. While the recruitment has been a challenge, with the partnership of Ministry of Health, we have now been able to implement an alternative payment model to support pediatric recruitment.
Lee says Fraser Health and the province have implemented a new plan to help attract pediatricians to the hospital, a recruitment drive the province said was substantial.
To say that there's been a massive effort to recruit to Peace Arch Hospital would be to greatly understate it. Pediatric care and maternity is very important at Peace Arch. It's fully funded. It's going to continue to be fully funded.
Back at the protest, more relief from expectant mothers and those who help them.
It's just been a whirlwind since we heard about the official closure on Friday. And it's just been so inspiring seeing all my colleagues come together in this way.
Dr. Sarah Fung says while she is happy to hear the news, she hopes a long-term plan is in place to ensure the maternity ward remains open and sufficiently staffed.
It is critical to have prompt access to high-quality maternities and pediatric services. You break your waters and there is a prolapse of the umbilical cord. These are all situations where seconds matter.
Fraser Health says they have recruited enough staff to cover the gap in care for the foreseeable future. In order to keep the maternity ward running, Peace Arch Hospital requires 5 full-time pediatricians. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, White Rock.
Vancouver police say they've arrested 2 suspects wanted on outstanding warrants. This was the scene earlier today in Strathcona near Union and Princess Streets. Police say the pair was spotted in a vehicle, but when officers pulled them over, they took off, ramming several police cars before speeding away. The VPD says the suspects were finally arrested after they tried to run. Recent shootings have left 4 innocent bystanders hurt in Langley, Coquitlam, and Surrey, but police say it's not organized crime.
All initially appear connected to street-level drug trafficking. They do not at this time appear to have any direct links to the Lower Mainland gang conflict and do not appear to be connected to each other.
The Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit says their efforts have seen gun violence drop in recent months. They note police work includes targeted enforcement, increased patrols, and shared intelligence. Since 2003, about 1 in every homicide investigations have ties to organized crime. Police are investigating a string of stabbings on the downtown east side that have sent 4 people to hospital since yesterday.
All 3 of these investigations are in the very early stages. The motives for these violent attacks is unknown at this time. That is something that we are still investigating.
The first 2 stabbings happened near Main and East Hastings Street, roughly at 4:30 a.m. and then 1:30 in the afternoon. Police are now trying to identify a man involved in the second attack. He was seen running north on Columbia Street. The man was wearing a gray and white hooded sweater, dark-colored pants, and a black baseball cap. A third stabbing occurred a few hours later at 6 p.m. when officers were called to an apartment near East Cordova and Columbia. No arrests have been made, and anyone with information is asked to contact police. A warning from police across Metro Vancouver tonight. A scam targeting seniors for bail money appears to be spreading. Burnaby RCMP and Delta Police now say they've received reports of victims being asked for thousands of dollars. Vancouver Police shared this video last week of what they called a new scam, where seniors are tricked into thinking loved ones were arrested and needed thousands in legal fees. Then a person showed up at the door to pick up the cash. Now, Burnaby Mounties say a 71-year-old woman was asked for $8,500 yesterday to get her nephew out of jail. Luckily, she contacted her bank and was told it was a scam before she handed over any money. Delta Police say last week a victim was scammed out of $10,000, thinking the cash was helping a grandson with bail. North Vancouver RCMP have also warned people about the scam. The Cloverdale Rodeo has been called off this year because the grandstand needs some serious repair. The rodeo is typically held over the May-long weekend at the Stetson Bowl. Organizers say there's no guarantee that grandstand can be repaired by then, but they add they are putting their energy into running the Cloverdale Country Fair with the hope it can go ahead safely. The rodeo was called off last year as well. 2023 marks the 75th anniversary of the rodeo. The federal government is spending nearly $9 million over the next 5 years to help Indigenous people access suitable legal services. Advocates say it's a step toward ending discrimination and could set an example for the rest of the country. The funding will be used to expand Indigenous Justice Centres, a frontline service to help people navigate the complex criminal justice system. There are 4 in BC, with locations in Merritt, Prince George and Prince Rupert, along with a virtual centre. The plan is to open 15 in total and raise the number of Indigenous people working as lawyers, judges, and other professionals.
Fully implemented, the strategy will reduce the number of First Nations people who become involved with the criminal justice system, as well as improve the experience of those who do. The strategy will also increase the number of First Nations people working within the justice system. They can help change the system from within.
He says Indigenous people currently make up 1/3 of prison inmates, a figure far out of line with population figures. Avalanche Canada and Parks Canada have issued a special public avalanche warning for backcountry users across BC. The wide-ranging warning applies to the North and South Columbias, the Purcells, Kootenay Boundary, and Glacier, Yoho, and Kootenay National Parks. It also applies to the Sea to Sky and South Coast inland regions from Squamish to Pemberton. Warm temperatures and sunshine over the weekend are expected to destabilize the snowpack. That warning runs from now to the end of Monday. Backcountry users should always check their local avalanche forecasts and pack the essential travel gear. Rescue gear, I should say. Good advice. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with a forecast. Joe, quite something. We have the cold and then warm up and we get that kind of warning.
This is a recipe for instability in our mountains. You're right, Dan. And it really is because of a massive, unseasonably strong high pressure ridge that's building in across the whole province, really starting for tomorrow. Wasn't it nice, though, to see the sunshine today for a moment across the South Coast? Beautiful hues in all the different kinds of clouds we had behind that morning front. Let me show you what the temperatures look like, because it will remain mild under this high pressure ridge. 7 right now at YVR. We'll actually warm up a little more over the next couple of days, but we will be watching the battle with the fog also over the next couple of days for lower elevation. So at the alpine level, we will see a building inversion. Snow levels will be up around 3,000 meters, and temperatures at alpine levels will be 5 to 10 degrees above seasonal starting tomorrow through the weekend. And again, that's leading to that instability. And it's a call for outdoor enthusiasts to get up into those mountains. So another part of why BC Avalanche issuing those warnings. Okay, so how about the fog? Taking us through the overnight. We do have a lot of moisture available. I think tomorrow is when we'll start to see some patchy fog, especially for the valleys. I'm hoping we'll see enough mix in the afternoon that we'll at least get some sunny breaks. Look at this model, though, pretty socked in for most of the day. Again, I do think because it's the start of our inversion, we will see some sunny breaks. Hoping for the same story on Saturday, but I'll take you through the full weekend forecast. It's never too early coming up.
That's for sure. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Sophia Financial Group of Raymond James Limited. Register now for our free Cash Flow Connection series at sophiaevents.ca.
TransLink says it is accelerating plans to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions over the next 3 decades. Part of what it's calling an ambitious goal, zero emissions from its entire bus fleet by 2040.
It's so important that we act now to do everything that we can to lessen the impacts of climate change.
He says transportation of all kinds contributes 35% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the region, and TransLink is urgently responding to do its part. Milestone goals for the public transit system include 400 new electric battery buses by 2030, 8 years from now, as well as an electric C-bus by then as well. There are 4 electric buses in the fleet, with 15 expected this year. A shocking discovery in Manitoba. 4 people found dead, including a baby, all trying to illegally cross into the U.S. from Canada. The horrific winter conditions they faced. After this. Thank you for staying with us on our commercial-free live stream. Hello to everybody watching online. Kejimkujik National Park is a popular Nova Scotia hiking destination in the summertime. This year they've carved out a new trail, their first in a decade. Colleen Jones takes us on a winter hike.
A lot of solitude, space, and the added bonus of no black flies. Kejimkujik National Park is pretty special in the winter. And this winter, something new.
It's just a little short hike from where I've parked my vehicle to get to a little bit of magic today. Come along.
Let me keep you in suspense for just a little longer. I'm heading to famous Mill Falls on the Mersey River. The falls were named after the portable mill that Morris Zwicker ran here back in the early 1900s. For years, there was an old pontoon seasonal bridge that would allow you to cross the river, but that was destroyed in Hurricane Dorian. They've come up with a better solution. The new pedestrian bridge is complete. It is special, and it gives you a new view where you get to stand right over the falls while you feel like you're walking on water.
Can you hear me over the roar? How spectacular is this view?
So when you're standing on our new bridge, it is just such a powerful feeling because you have a view of the Mill Falls and you feel the current of the river passing under you. And it is such a different view that we're used to seeing in Keji because you're so high up in the trees and you just are surrounded by these tall hemlocks that you can actually enjoy the view.
The bridge has also created the first new trail at Keji in a decade.
Our new trail is named Ugmeg, which means twisted in Mi'kmaq, which is a good representation of how the trail goes. It follows the Mersey River, which it just gives you a beautiful view, and it's just such a peaceful and relaxing experience to walk on that trail.
I'm right there. I think this is a new bridge.
It is peaceful. And not only did I have the trail to myself, why, I think I might have had the whole darn park to myself. It's one of the joys of winter hiking.
Not a bad day at the office.
I feel like it's very important at this time to take the time to go out and be surrounded by nature and disconnect from all this virtual work and learning we're doing, and just to take a time and breathe fresh air and see nature.
Breathe fresh air in nature? As Hippocrates said, nature itself is the best physician. Wise words from the man considered the father of medicine. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Kejimkujik.
Devastating details are emerging today after an alert from U.S. officials sparked an urgent search for missing people near the Canada-U.S. border in southern Manitoba. RCMP discovered 4 bodies in a frozen field, one of them a baby. As Cameron McIntosh explains, this was an alleged human smuggling attempt, and someone's already been arrested.
In that field under that snow lies the Canada-US border. Simple as it may look to walk across, in a whiteout blizzard, that can turn deadly fast.
It is an absolute and heartbreaking tragedy.
And the RCMP say 4 people died trying. A man, a woman, a teenager, and an infant.
It appears that they all died due to exposure to cold weather.
RCMP were tipped off by American officials who say on Tuesday night they stopped and arrested this man, Steve Shand of Orlando, about 1.5 kilometers south of the border in St. Vincent, Minnesota. He was driving a van with 2 Indian nationals. One was carrying a backpack with items for an infant. He said it belonged to another family who had become separated trying to cross. Not far away, they found 5 other Indian nationals who were walking towards the van.
We have seen in the past, like when people exhaust some sort of legal options to stay in either Canada or in the US, they have tried to cross the borders.
Emerson Pembina is one of Western Canada's busiest border crossings. In 2017, it saw a spike of irregular crossings. People leaving the US for Canada. 1 woman died, others were injured, including a couple of men who lost their fingers to frostbite.
It's just sad that people felt that level of desperation to take that chance.
The local Reeve says activity at the border has significantly decreased, but warns.
I hope people understand that it's dangerous to cross the border at the best of times, but especially in these kind of extreme conditions.
Just don't do it. Do not listen to anyone who tells you they can get you to your destination safely. They cannot. Even with proper clothing, it is not a journey that is possible.
Cameron McIntosh reporting tonight from Manitoba. In Ottawa today, new steps to take responsibility for a failure to protect Indigenous children. The government announced it will release thousands more residential school documents, calling it a moral obligation. And as Olivia Stefanovich reports, the information is expected to validate the stories of survivors.
Torn away from his family at the age of 7, Gurna Anjakanub spent decades trying to uncover the truth of what happened at Pelican Lake Indian Residential School in Northern Ontario.
When I think about it now, the lost childhood that we had, I'll never be able to, or survivors will never be able to get that childhood back.
But he says they may finally be able to get closure now that the federal government is releasing thousands of previously undisclosed residential school documents detailing the conditions of buildings, education programs, and instances of abuse.
Hopefully things will turn around for the better.
Miigwech.
The records are being transferred under a new agreement to the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation over the next 6 months.
This is an important step on the journey of reconciliation. It is a step that is frankly long overdue.
Ottawa long resisted disclosing the documents because of legal contracts with Roman Catholic entities. But after mounting public pressure following last year's discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at former residential school sites, the Crown Indigenous Relations Minister says he instructed the government to hand over the files without the consent of religious orders.
We're taking accountability for the role that we played in the residential school system and for Canada's failure in protecting the rights of Indigenous peoples.
More documents may be released after the department does an intensive internal review of what it can share, while respecting the privacy of survivors and legal commitments.
Canada has a moral obligation to survivors to pursue the truth and to ensure access to documents.
When asked whether the government anticipates legal action from the Roman Catholic Church, the minister answered it's a risk Canada needs to take and not ask survivors to bear. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
If you or someone you know is looking for support, you can reach the National Residential School Crisis Line at the number there, 1-866-925-4419. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is available to anyone impacted. As Russian troops continue to mass at its borders with Ukraine, the U.S. and its NATO allies were doing damage control. Not because of something Russia did, but because of what the U.S. president said. As Katie Simpson explains, it's making an already tense situation much harder.
Well, let me start by first saying a few words about Russia and Ukraine.
It's never a good day when it starts with a clarification, and that's what the U.S. president was forced to do.
If any assembled Russian units move across the Ukrainian border, that is an invasion. But it will be met with severe and coordinated economic response.
Joe Biden's suggestion the day before that a minor incursion by Russia into Ukraine might not be met with a significant response rattled allies. And Ukraine's president, who tweeted, "We want to remind the great powers that there are no minor incursions." With Russian troops gathering at the border, NATO members quickly stepped in to reassure Ukraine and make sure Russia doesn't see an opening.
If Russia were to make any kind of incursion into Ukraine of any, on any scale, whatever, I think that would be a disaster.
There will be a high price. NATO allies will make sure that happens.
Allies are united in the face of a possible further invasion of Ukraine.
The diplomatic cleanup is a distraction for the U.S. Secretary of State, who is meeting with European allies ahead of talks with Russia's foreign minister.
Our collective aim, the goal that we share, was to seek a diplomatic path to de-escalate tensions caused by Russia's massing of troops along Ukraine's borders.
But the reality remains, a diplomatic resolution does not look likely, and NATO needs to prepare for Russia's next move.
What they're trying to do right now is prevent them from going on to Kiev, prevent them from staying and occupying a larger swath of Ukrainian territory, preventing a larger loss of life that they might expect that regrettably is going to happen no matter what type of actions that they take.
If your budget is feeling pinched, you're not alone. As inflation skyrockets in Canada, how can you cut some corners and save some money? And what you can expect from your employer. We have some advice coming up.
It's every backcountry adventurer's nightmare.
Just have a look, probe around, look.
If you're buried beneath one, minutes, even seconds matter. These ski patrollers are demonstrating rescue procedures. If there were other people nearby, and if you were wearing an avalanche beacon, there's a good chance you could be dug out and rescued in time.
Search it up, what you got, big girl? You got a hit here.
Michel Trudeau wasn't so lucky. In 1998, the former Prime Minister's son and several friends were caught in an avalanche and swept into this BC lake. The tragedy caused his brother Justin to get involved, promoting avalanche awareness.
Avalanches are predictable. You can tell when one slope or one area is likely to produce slides.
The aim of this demonstration is to show people how to protect themselves.
So by getting the message out to people, you're going to do a lot in terms of avoiding the costs of rescues and the costs in human life.
Many people rely on the Canadian Avalanche Centre and its website for up-to-date information on snow conditions. But the bulletin's survival is in question because the BC government has pulled the plug on nearly $40,000 in funding.
The bulletin's in jeopardy because we, as a small not-for-profit organization, we can't raise enough money to produce and distribute and make this information public.
The prospect of losing the Avalanche Bulletin worries the people who rely on it.
Snowmobilers, backcountry skiers, folks from across Western Canada are going, excuse me, but this is absolutely essential to my winter recreation. This is an important part of my life. Don't let that bulletin go away.
Albertans make up 40% of the people using the bulletin, but the Alberta government doesn't contribute to it. Justin Trudeau would like to see that change.
Instead of paying for the rescues, so many rescues which get extremely expensive, a little bit of prevention saves a lot of trouble. So if we would like to see the Alberta government pitch in as well and support us with the bulletin.
This weekend there will be avalanche awareness days at ski hills across Canada, and in particular in Alberta and British Columbia. Mike Vernon, CBC News, Lake Louise.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight for you on CBC Vancouver News.
When people in authority say something, that this is the new guidance based on science, we need to do the best we can to make sure that the written documents that relate to those statements are updated as quickly as possible.
The BC Centre for Disease Control says it is sorry for quietly posting another round of COVID isolation guidelines. The changes left plenty of parents and daycare operators very confused and frustrated. Medical professionals say the guidelines are backed by science, but better communication is pivotal.
It is critical to have prompt access to high-quality maternities and pediatric services.
A big worry for expectant parents in Metro Vancouver has eased for now. Fraser Health says it will not close the maternity ward at Peace Arch Hospital in White Rock. It was first set to shut down at the end of the month and have deliveries rerouted to Langley. Parents and doctors rallied, and not long after this morning, the health authority said it found a way to keep the ward open.
We're really excited to get reopened and get people back taking care of their mental and physical health.
Any amount of students in the space honestly feels like a blessing.
And gym operators are rolling out the mats and weights in BC for customers now that they can officially reopen. Still, they can't pack them in. Each facility needs to give at least 7 square meters of floor space per person, and every person has to prove they're vaccinated and wear a mask, except when they're actively exercising. Prices are soaring on all sorts of things in Canada, and one place you're probably feeling the pinch is at the grocery store. But beyond paying more, there's another problem: a lack of stock. As Natasha Reeb reports, even if you have the money to cover the higher prices, you might not be able to find what you're looking for. The latest wave of COVID is keeping staff out of the store and trucks away from the loading bay.
It changes daily, changes hourly, and you do the best to keep your store open.
At this specialty shop, they're down about 20% of their regular staff in store and at the warehouse.
COVID is hitting us hard right now, no doubt about it. We're short employees. Right now, we can do what we can do to keep our shelves full with the employees we have.
There's also the issue of the supply they don't have. Ottawa is mandating truckers crossing the Canada-US border show proof they've been vaccinated. That means potentially thousands of drivers are off the job.
The border is the most important thing we have for our nation's food security, especially in the middle of winter. And so to actually have this vaccine mandate implemented right now is playing with fire.
Add weather to the mix. Floods and snow and ice storms stymie the supply flow, all making for a perfect storm. Sylvain Charlebois says it's different from the beginning of the pandemic.
I was nervous for maybe a couple of days in March of 2020, but understood that really it was a demand-driven issue, people buying too much. This time it's a supply side issue for sure, and that makes me a little bit nervous.
For now, this shop has come up with workarounds, anticipating the unpredictable.
We are trying to order more stock less frequently so that we keep our stores full. And we're predicting longer turnarounds for our orders. So if we're typically waiting 3 days on an order, let's give it 6 days now.
Even when Omicron subsides, shoppers can expect stores to be struggling to fill their shelves for at least another few months. Natasha Reeb, CBC News, Edmonton.
So how do you manage amid inflation and supply shortages? And what can you do with your employer, if anything? For more, we're joined by Murray Baker. He's the Manager of Financial Empowerment at Family Services of Greater Vancouver. Murray, first of all, you're running workshops on how to manage money. Are you busier?
Yes, definitely. We're seeing an increase in number, even though we've gone online to deliver our workshops virtually. And we've had a big increase in different agencies and organizations contacting us to deliver workshops for their clients.
Now, what are you hearing from clients, and what specifically is being affected in their daily lives by climbing prices?
Well, the big area, of course, is food, because that's not a discretionary item. People need food. And when prices start going up, people start to feel the pinch for affording food. The other big area is rent. And now that the rent freeze has come off the end of December, people are having to scramble to come up with that extra cash. At the same time, inflation is hitting them at the grocery store.
So what are the major pieces of advice you're giving them right now?
Well, I always suggest shop around and do a lot more comparison shop. I'm a big believer in some of the apps. Reebee and Flip are a couple that I really like that are free apps. They allow you to compare prices at all the different grocery stores in your areas. And I always say combine this with price matching. So do your grocery list, find out who has the best prices, and rather than going around to 5 or 6 different grocery stores just to get the item that's on sale at each of those, is go to a price matching store and have them match all the items on your list.
Now, what about, and you mentioned it, what about shelter? We know this is one of the, if not the most expensive region to live in the country. Practically, are there things that people can do short of trying to save more money? It's not as if everyone can go and ask for a rent decrease or a mortgage decrease.
Yeah, and that's one of the most difficult areas is that there just isn't a surplus of housing. So renting right now is really tough. And really what we're seeing some people do is take on roommates. That's one area. Or people who own a house and are struggling to pay the mortgage rates, which they will probably feel the pinch going forward as interest rates start to rise, are taking in tenants. A lot of people, we're working with various clients that are taking in homestay students too to help defray the cost. So that's another option as well.
Although I suppose in some of those cases that might be challenging with COVID-19 and other issues. But lastly, Murray, and I appreciate your time, we've also heard of labor shortages. Some economists saying this year more workers may be in a better position to go to their employer and ask for raises. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that may be the case, but I think it's going to be very sector specific. So for instance, workers who are out there dealing with the public, interacting with people, such as in the food and hospitality industries, I think they have more leverage than some people who are able to continue to work from home. And people are being more demanding, not just in terms of wages, but the flexibility to be able to work from home rather than have to expose themselves in the midst of COVID.
Murray Baker, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A story of buying a dream home. It's turned into a nightmare. Peeling back the layers to find out your home had previously been on fire and why it was not a home to start with. That story's next. And at almost 6:42, a live look at snowy Kamloops tonight. A change of weather is coming for much of our province. Johanna Wagstaffe will break down the dry stretch ahead after the break.
Hello, my name is Lise Brown. I'm standing on Treaty 1 territory, and today I'm going to talk about climbing a tree. So there's a few things to think about when we're climbing a tree. The first thing is our relationship with the tree. So we want to think about finding a tree that looks strong and maybe a little bit old, because we need to make sure that the tree can hold our bodies. So when we find a tree that we want to climb, we can look at it, see if it has big, strong branches, and we can start hanging out with the tree and putting our feet on it and putting our arms on it and testing it out to see if all the branches are strong enough to hold us. We also want to make sure that we have an educator or an adult with us to make sure that we're staying safe. Our educators and adults are there to make sure that someone knows where we are, and if we need some support, they're there to help us. But our educators always keep 2 feet on the ground because they're just there to support us and watch us and cheer us on. Educators can help children climb trees by asking them how they feel in the tree. They can ask them if the branches feel strong enough to climb. They can ask us questions like, hey, do you feel safe up there? Are you having fun up there? They might ask, what do you see from that height that you're standing on?
We get to go so far up high.
One thing that educators can think about is the height of a child. So if I am on the ground and I'm looking up at the tree, I can decide how high I can climb by putting my hands in the air And where my fingers touch the tree, that's as far as my feet should go to stay safe. That's a good rule when we're first learning to climb a tree, is never put our feet higher than our hands can reach. The other thing we want to think about is the relationship with ourselves. Climbing trees is about being independent and strong and moving our bodies and testing our limits. And so we want to check in with our heart to make sure that we feel good in the tree. And we want to check in with our mind to make sure that we are thinking about what we're doing and making sure the tree is there to hold us. We're checking with our heart and mind to make sure that this is a good thing for us and our body at this time. So climbing trees is one way for us to do what we call risky play. And one of the types of risky play that we can do is climbing to great heights. And young people love to climb to great heights. It allows us to see the world from a different perspective. It allows us to use our bodies and build our gross motor skills. It allows us to learn about problem solving and what our bodies can do. And it teaches us about resilience and about managing our own risk. And so there's lots of benefits to climbing trees.
Scientists have made an encouraging discovery off the coast of Tahiti. They've found a pristine 3-kilometer-long reef of giant rose-shaped corals. It's deeper than normal, and experts think that might protect it from the bleaching effects of warming ocean waters. And that has scientists calling for a bigger effort to find out what's under the waves.
An amazing new discovery, a coral reef system that basically is sitting at quite an impressive depth of between 30 to 70 meters, about 3 kilometers long in shape, in a very, very good condition. You know, generally coral reefs are found up to 25 meters in tropical systems, so it's quite impressive to find such system in a very good state of health. And if you look at the images, it's basically a field of huge flowers, coral garden in a way. Some of them looks like roses, some of them are 2 meters wide. I think what's important is also raises the issue of how coral reefs become more resilient to climate change, because climate change is the main aspects that are impacting coral reefs. We also have pollution and overfishing, which comes on that. But certainly that gives us hope that there might be other ecosystems that we have not found in the ocean. What's really important is really having the capacity to understand how those systems work, how they interact with the different stresses, but also to map them, because that's where we have big knowledge gaps in the ocean. We only have about 20% of the ocean seafloor which has been mapped in high resolution. And of course we need to protect them. We have the science, but we need the science to take the action and to really conserve those ecosystems.
Amazing stuff, eh, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I heard this story today. First of all, incredible that we're still discovering things like this under our oceans. Only 20% of ocean floors mapped. Yeah, it's just wild.
Yeah, big oceans.
The other the other interesting thing, I mean, I looked into this story, Dan. There's a Goldilocks zone for coral reefs between 30 and 150 meters, so you can still get the sunlight from above. But
just
hoping there's some more Goldilocks zones out there. And well, speaking of Goldilocks zones, we're in that
Good
for
segue.
fog potential. Thank you. You knew I was going to go there. Take a look, first of all, at the current temperatures across the country. But seriously, we've got a bit of a ripe setup for fog across the south coast, and we'll see if we get into that sweet spot for lingering fog through the day. Just a quick snapshot across the country, still looking at that Arctic air mass through parts of Ontario, Quebec, Labrador, the north, really the pink showing you a nice relief in through places like Alberta, and starting to see that relief in through Saskatchewan as well. We're definitely on the warm side of the jet stream thanks to our huge ridge of high pressure. Heads up for migraine sufferers. We're going to see quite the spike in pressure over the next couple of days. Going through a wild swing in temperatures for Prince George, Fort St. John, Williams Lake, minus double digits overnight as we slide through the freezing mark. Look for freezing rain tomorrow morning through those locations, but clearing as we head into the afternoon and as we get into this high pressure that almost everyone will be sharing with. Prince Rupert, you'll see showers giving way to clear skies in the next couple of days. And look at all of that sunshine across the southern interior. Also watching for fog potential in the valleys tomorrow. So you can really sort of see as I run through this through the next 24 hours, all of the moisture is directed up and over to northern coastal sections. I thought we almost got by with a warning-free day across the province, but Castier Mountains looking to get that heavy snow. Everywhere else is under that high-pressure ridge as we head into Friday. And you can see in the forecast model a breaking up of the clouds as we head into the afternoon. So that's our hope. So we'll see some fog in the morning, and then as we head into the afternoon, getting into some sunshine. And that is very reflective in my forecast. Check this out. Put in the fog in just in case through the morning hours. Hoping to see that sunshine break through in the afternoon. Definitely a better chance Friday and Saturday. Dan, Sunday looks pretty cloudy. But look at that. Do you remember the last time we had a stretch like this of such
I'm looking at it.
weather?
My meteorologist friend just put this thing up on the screen that said it was 7 days in a row. There's 7 days in a week. You know?
Crazy.
Is there a correlation? You'll find out.
There is a correlation. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, it is not exactly the house one buyer was looking for. In a red-hot market, she was just happy to get a toehold. But as Ariana Kellen tells us, she was in for a big shock and ended up literally burned by the deal.
Quaint and neat, this house is everything small business owner Tiffany Elton wanted. But as the St. John's woman has learned, not everything is as it seems from the outside.
The house looked great, low maintenance, and it said it was newly renovated. So I had no reason to not believe that it was true, and it looked perfect.
After a home inspection didn't find any glaring issues, she bought the property. It wasn't until she called pest control and got access to her attic that Elton discovered her perfect home wasn't as perfect as what she thought.
He said, "You have a bigger problem than just rodents up here."
Charred, blackened wood all throughout the attic. A casing that once held a fluorescent light still hangs there, signaling that this wasn't always a home. In 1986, it was a double garage that had been in a fire. It was later converted into a home. And while people have been living here for decades, City Hall has no record of that work ever being done. Tiffany Elton trusted what was on the real estate listing and the property disclosure statement. The home inspector didn't catch the burn because the previous owners wouldn't give access to the attic. Those previous owners lived here for 10 years and tell CBC News they didn't know about the fire or that this was a double garage. The city never came back to inspect after that conversion in 1986 because the work was done without permits. The city of St. John's calls Elton's situation unfortunate, but isn't doing interviews and won't accept any blame.
In my opinion, they should be the ones to come forward and say, you know, we fooled up. This house isn't a house. It shouldn't have been sold. And here's how we intend to fix the situation. But they're not.
Every now and then, a buyer ends up with a lemon of a home, even after they've done everything they were supposed to do. And they're faced with the problem, the very real problem.
Crawford says things like having title insurance and a good home inspection can help, but sometimes even that can't protect you. Something Tiffany Elton says she knows all too well. A structural engineer has said the home needs extensive work to ensure its safety in the future. Another cost Elton says is too much to bear. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
It's not an Olympic sport yet, but it won't be long before you see ski skate on the local hills. Ouch. We'll show you what it is and apparently what makes it great after this.
In the fall of 2016, I received an email from a teacher in the remote Dene community of La Loche, Saskatchewan. Would I come north and take part in a canoe trip with 8 of her students, a collective they called the Man Group?
So they had this group, and sadly, one of the boys involved in this group was the shooter in the scenario. So as time went by after the event, they were looking for ways to heal. and to heal with these boys and to help these boys, soon to become men, heal. And they got the idea of doing this canoe trip. And then I guess through one conversation or another, it turned out that many of them were fans of my work. So I had the series Survivor Man for many years, plus many other outdoor and adventure and nature programs on television. What I was not ready for was the depth of emotion involved with something like this. I mean, you know, the first thing I saw pulling up to the school was, like they have on sides of highways sometimes, the honorary station with crosses and flowers. And that immediately put me in my place, if you will. It immediately reminded me, oh, right, this is not just another adventure canoe trip. And I've guided hundreds of trips with kids as an outdoor guide. This is going to be something much deeper. And, you know, so it began with, obviously after that, the meeting with them was all fun and comical and the boys were funny and everything. But I just knew right from the start, this is going to take on a different tone from anything I'd ever experienced in my life. Me being there alone with those boys / men and the elders way up there, it just kept happening that's the way it was going to be. And no pretense, no TV agenda, no big producer, high ideals of making a film. So I just grabbed legitimately whatever cameras were laying around my house, thought, oh, I'm going to throw a bunch of cameras in the boys' hands, let them film.
We are junior survivors here on the next episode of Survivor Boys.
I didn't realize that in the end that it was going to be as powerful a statement as it was, or that it was going to affect me profoundly, or that it was going to be something that they also would cherish, and that it is what it is. The main point of this film is that nature heals, that it can heal, that it's powerful enough to heal regardless of what you do. So regardless of what the boys felt, they were being healed to some extent just being there. Nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the elders even, or the teachers, but everything to do with the nature itself. And every day of our lives, that natural world is there waiting to heal us. And so, yeah, that's how it affected me. It reminded me, you know, get away from yourself, you know, remember that there's a much bigger picture going on here.
There's snowboarding, snowshoeing, and skiing. What about ski skating? One more way Canadians are finding a way to play out in the snow. The CBC's Liam Harrop gives it a try.
Hello, I'm Liam from CBC Edmonton, and I am here to try out ski skating.
Snowfit is a short mini skis, and it's super easy to wear with any winter boots. So you just take it off this clip and put it on. It's starting since last year. In Canada, we are the first ones renting this equipment. These are from Europe and are super awesome and easy to put it in your bag, and just you need your poles, Snowfit, winter boots, that's it. More easy impossible. Sometimes we are using here in this park and people stop us and they try immediately.
We actually have taken them to Rabbit Hill, and we actually hit the terrain park. We hit the jumps, we hit a couple boxes. There's a few people right now that are pretty crazy on these and do like backflips, all that stuff. Now everyone's like skis and snowboards. I feel like it's going to be skis, snowboards, and snow feet.
Across the Atlantic, a British-Belgian teenager has soared to a new height. She is now the youngest woman to ever fly solo around the world.
It's just really crazy. I haven't quite processed it, I think. I mean, coming here, I was basically in tears, just trying to imagine what it'd be like to finally be home after 5 months. And even this flight wasn't easy, so I'm just super happy.
19-year-old Zara Rutherford is also the first person to make the 5-continent journey in an ultralight aircraft. She started the journey in August and landed in Belgium today after flying 51,000 kilometers over 52 countries. But one solo flight around the globe, not enough for her. She plans on doing the next one in space. She is going to study engineering in university and hopes to become an astronaut. Bet she'll do it too. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can always watch this show on CBC Gem, our free app. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is at 11 o'clock, right after the National with Isabel Regem. Good night.